How many of you had that but God moment in your life? Now, it sounds really awkward to say, but that is true of my life. And mine came really when I was around between the age of 12 and 14. That's when God saved me and He changed me and He changed my affections for Him and not for the things of this world. Now, I still fight those affections for the world, but God lives in me and He gave me grace and He extended His mercy to me. That's exactly the resounding effect that I get from Ephesians 2 1 through 5. Students, a lot of you are going to see that you have already studied this passage. We studied this last fall. But in our Apostles' Creed curriculum, we are going to review this text again. And it's very important that we review this text because rightfully so, we all have to be reminded of the gospel. We have to be reminded of our but God moment. So what I want to do is I want to read this from Ephesians 2, 4 through 5. It says, "But God, who is rich in mercy because of His great love that He had for us, made us alive with Christ. Even though we were dead in trespasses, you are saved by grace." Jesus gives us grace. He gives us a gift of grace that we do not deserve that's available through the cross and through the resurrection, through the gospel, because of what He did on the cross by absorbing the punishment and wrath of God for our sin. We have a way. He extended His mercy, but not by not pouring out His wrath and all of that upon us. He poured it upon His Son Jesus. That's what the Father did. That's exactly what we see in this text, but in a very devotional feel, so that we don't get too ahead of ourselves for Sunday, July 19th. Let's think about it this way. Think about, have you ever considered the weight of your sin? Have you ever considered the seriousness of your sin? All the lies you've ever told, all the bad language you've ever said, all the substances that you maybe have tried to put yourself into, all the relationships that were toxic. All of them are bad things, but they have their ultimate root in one problem: defiance and sin and pride before a holy and living God. We choose to reject God. We don't live as good people. We live as sinful, wretched people. And that's exactly what we get from this text. And before the but God moment, you had a life where you were falling into sin and pursuing after sin and not after God. And God pursued you. He pursued me. He pursued after us. And that but God, that changed everything. I had another but God moment in 2011 when I was impacted by the entirety of the gospel when I was doing Central Kid Camp, and it changed my whole perspective of the gospel and how I believed in Jesus. And I believe that was a moment of sanctification for me where God was growing me in holiness. And so what I want you to consider in all that, hearing my testimony and hearing, just little bits and pieces of that, but then also thinking of this: what is your but God moment? When was the time when there was a change? Now, it may be a little hard in some situations. You may not have that bright, shining moment where, it was like, you just had this epiphany or whatnot. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, was there a time when Jesus changed your life and you do not physically or consciously walk in sin, and you have repented from that, and you trust and obeyed in Jesus, and you're continuing to fall in a pattern of righteousness in Jesus Christ? That is Jesus' righteousness. Has there ever been a time for that for you? I want you to consider that this week. Be open and honest with yourself and really consider, what are some ways that I've walked in death and the trespasses of my sin? What are some ways where I've walked in the ways of this world, walking the ways of my original father, Satan, instead of my heavenly Father? What are some ways where you've been disobedient, walking in the life of the fleshly desires, carrying out inclinations of the flesh, carrying out the thoughts, and were by nature children of wrath? I want you to think about that. And when was your but God moment? And if there hasn't been, consider that as we approach Sunday, July 19th. Can't wait to see you again, and I will talk to you later.